right, well, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're here today. Welcome everybody to the launch today and the discussion of a joint publication from the Asian Development Bank and LinkedIn. We have the authors here today. We have a number of industry experts and other top experts, some of us here in person, some online. Welcome to those of you who are joining us online. The world is changing, the world of work is changing as well, and the needs of employers are increasingly for digital skills, and skill sets need to really change to accommodate that as well. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. As befits perhaps the topic, we have some people here, we have some people joining us by Zoom. We hope to have a small window for questions and answers later on, so please, if you have a chance, put your questions into the Q&A box. Well, to kick things off, I'm very happy to have our Director General of the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department, Bruno Carrasco, to kick things off. Thereafter, we'll hear from Dave Woodward. He is the Vice President and the Head of the Public Policy at LinkedIn. Bruno, over to you, please.
I will take my mask off if that's okay with everyone. Thank you very much, Karen. I'm really delighted to be here at the launching of this publication. I wanted to warmly welcome Dave, Tricia, Lito, my ADB colleagues. I think virtually we have Jack connecting. So thank you very much for being here. It's a real pleasure to be able to share the stage with all of you on this important publication. I have a beautiful copy here for those of you who have not seen it. Digital Jobs and Digital Skills, the Shifting Landscape in Asia and the Pacific. The origins of this publication dates back to the time where our former Vice President for Knowledge and Management, VP Susan Dono, wanted to see how we could connect a little bit more with some of the industry leaders. This was part of, in some ways, the initial thinking to where we want to go as a solutions bank. So as you know, ADB is positioning itself as a solutions bank, which means that we cannot simply rely on our financing, but we have to embody much more knowledge solutions into our operations. And to be able to do that effectively, we need to establish partnerships. And the partnerships will give us a lot of good entry points, a lot of learning for us to be able to better intermediate knowledge and to be able to extend some of those solutions to our member countries, our developing member countries. So we're delighted for you to join us in this launching. Many of you will know that we had an innovations fair yesterday, and that is another example of how we're investing in knowledge. Yesterday we featured Netflix as one of the important disruptors. I think there are many other companies coming into this innovation space, including of course LinkedIn. I'm particularly pleased with this partnership with LinkedIn, with an impressive global reach and a very special place in the talent marketplace. We really appreciate your work and your contribution. Your data platform provides us real-time information and trends in the job market, which of course has become of increasing agility. The Asia-Pacific region is very much changing. It's a changing landscape. We have seen a lot of changes since COVID-19. It has been the ultimate disruptor in many ways. And as the Asia-Pacific Bank, we're certainly keen to be able to build on a lot of those lessons from the COVID-19, including how to build the green, resilient, inclusive economy. So that is a common agenda for all of us. We see right now two big waves, certainly affecting Asia Pacific and us as the regional bank. And the first one, of course, is climate change. And we're very much moving towards becoming the climate bank for Asia Pacific. And the second one is the digital solutions wave. And I think that we can't forget about the importance of the second wave. For that matter, this work that we're doing is part of recognizing the importance of digitalization, Digital skills are becoming very much indispensable competencies. And in order to succeed in the labor market, we need to make sure that we build up those skills. And that comes across all occupations. Following COVID-19, of course, there has been a boom in terms of digital solutions, and we obviously want to be able to help and support our developing member countries to become better able to equip their labor forces to meet these increasing demands. I want to now turn a little bit to the study itself, and I did enjoy very much reading the study. The future of digital skills and digital jobs is something that is important to all of us. I would like to make some references to the 3 E's as I read this report, the 3 E's representing employment, environment, and equity. So first on employment, investing in digital skills is crucial to tap the employment opportunities arising from the explosion of the digital solutions. I did want to refer to a PwC report that was published last year that concluded that closing the skills gap would create 5.3 million new jobs globally by 2030. So that's an indication of the strong demand and how countries need to start investing more in digitalizing the workplace and being able to support that generation of workers that have those skill sets. Countries in Asia and the Pacific certainly stand to gain in the context of the digital revolution, and we obviously see that there are large gaps still in that labor force that will need to be looked at. The second E is on environment, and here again we recognize that that the digital skills for sustainability will include protecting the environment, and whether it is in the context of the green skills to enable the just transitions in the workforce, or enabling skills for climate resilient infrastructure. So I'm very glad to see that the report did cover the green sector. And then last but not least, E for equity. We are all cognizant of the importance of the digital divides, and in line with our inclusion policies, we need to make sure that we leave no one behind in this digital revolution. I am very pleased to see that there are important gender considerations in the report. We need to ensure that the disadvantaged communities such as youth, girls and women, and people with disabilities are brought into this new wave. And we do recognize that we will need to target more and more the inclusion policy into the skills upgrading. With that, I would like to again thank everyone for joining us here today. Please do share your thoughts for all the participants. And importantly, I think I'd like to see how we can take this this first publication forward. How do we want to build on this? So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. And over to you, Dave.
Great, thank you, Karen, and good afternoon, Director General Carrasco, ADB colleagues, esteemed members of the business community. I'll just start out by saying how proud LinkedIn is to be able to launch this report with the ADB and highlight the importance of digital skills in today's labor market. And to take a step back, so LinkedIn's vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And one way we operationalize that is by leveraging what we've termed our economic graph. So our economic graph is essentially a digital representation of the labor market, connecting 850 million members on our platform to thousands of skills, jobs, educational institutions, and a range of professional knowledge all on our platform. And for this report, we leverage the economic graph to analyze the impact of the pandemic on the supply and demand for digital skills and digital jobs. And one thing that the data showed, and I think it's clear to everybody, is that the pandemic really sort of catalyzed a dramatic transformation, not only in how we work and where we work, but why we work. And so it really is sort of this unprecedented moment in time. And at LinkedIn, we refer to this as the Great Reshuffle. And it's a moment where all of us together are really reimagining the future of work. And I'll just point out that to sort of underscore that people are actively adding new skills and engaging in new ventures at a pace we haven't seen before on our platform. And businesses are reinventing their business model and coming up with new go-to-market strategies and sometimes even inventing new markets to pursue. And all of this economic activity, all this economic upheaval normally would take many years, maybe even decades to transpire, but we're seeing this all compressed into a couple of years. So it really is sort of unprecedented and unique. And one advantage of our economic graph and all the data available there is we're able to see a lot of this transformation, a lot of these trends happen in real time. And one trend that we're seeing is that the labor market is shifting to become a skills-based labor market. And basically what that means is employers are hiring more based on skills than previously it was on educational qualifications and previous work experience. And look, we think this is a great thing. We think it democratizes opportunity. And I'll say that sort of all of the trends we're seeing underscore the importance of this partnership we have initiated between LinkedIn and ADB. And we think that when you take a look at the Asia Pacific region, it has some of the most populous countries in the world. And when you take a look at the labor market demographics, it has some of the youngest workforces in the world. So we think it's just critically important that we continue to work together to help workers in the region gain the skills and gain the knowledge to be able to navigate the current world of work and the future world of work. I'll close just by saying thank you to the Asian Development Bank for your leadership in the region and for partnering with LinkedIn on this report. We are hopeful that it will shape and inform the skilling debate in the region for governments, regional governments, and business leaders alike. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Well, I promised you the authors of the book, so I'm very proud and honored to introduce Trisha Suresh and Shanti Jagannathan, who are going to delve into the details of the report. Trisha.
Thank you, and thank you, Karen. And a very good afternoon, DG Carrasco, ADB colleagues, and members of the business community. My name is Trisha, and I'm very happy to be here with us today to share with you some of the findings of the report that we developed in partnership with the ADB. I think we've got some slides that are coming up. Let me go back, please. That's a methodology slide that we can start with. There you go. Okay, great. That's a cover slide. Wonderful. So can we go to the next? You know what? I've got the clicker. My apologies. There you go. This is better.
Let's get technology to work for us, right?
I should add a few more digital skills into my LinkedIn profile as well right after this. And there you go. So I wanted to first start with the methodology of the report. It is based on two sets of data that we use. The first being LinkedIn Economic Graph, and the second being an ADB survey on digital credentials. For LinkedIn's Economic Graph, as Dave had pointed out, it is essentially all the data that we've got on LinkedIn. It consists of 850 million members globally, 59 million companies, 39,000 skills, 120,000 schools, and millions of open jobs. Now, this living, breathing data set gives us a very granular insight on how the labor market is moving. For the purposes of this report, ADB and LinkedIn came together to develop a new taxonomy, or rather a taxonomy for the purposes of this report. And it had three categories of digital skills: basic digital skills, which are skills such as Microsoft Office and other productivity skills, some of the more intermediate digital skills in building softwares, and more disruptive advanced digital skills like AI and cybersecurity. For the purposes of this report, at least for the LinkedIn Economic Graph side, we covered several countries. We had India, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines as developing economies in the report. And then we also included Singapore and Australia as APAC developed economy comparators, and the US as an international benchmark. The analysis for this report covered data until February 2021, after which we were very busy writing the report. The report also is complemented with a survey on digital credentials that ADB ran, and this covered both the provider and user side of digital credentials, so looking at both online education providers as well as employers. There were 3 sectors that were particularly covered. These are e-learning, smart cities, and the green economy, seen as industry sectors that will be driving economic growth for the region. For the survey, the analysis covered Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Asia, and then the US as an advanced economy comparator. To complement some of the quantitative insights, we also ran qualitative surveys to inform the study, and these were employer surveys. So with that, some of the findings from LinkedIn Economic Graph. So one of the first insights that we found was that digital hiring has been highly resilient during the pandemic. And every time I look at this chart, I'm always surprised and amazed at how quickly digital hiring both rebounded from the drop that we see in 2020 and how it has just continued to rise through the months after. This comes about from obviously rapid digital transformation across industries that we saw. Now, I don't have it on this slide, but beyond just digital hiring, what we found is that advanced digital skills were much more resilient than basic digital skills across economies that we covered. The next insight was on how digital jobs have become more in demand in developing economies in particular. So in the report, we've got top 10 jobs, but just for this slide, I've featured top 5 jobs in each of the countries we covered. And the yellow highlights there show you some of the more digital jobs that were in demand on the platform across the countries we covered. So what we found is that in the developing economies, technical digital jobs are more in demand. And then for some of the more advanced economies that we covered, like the US and Australia, we see a greater demand of business and management jobs that are still in demand. Some of these jobs still require digital skills, but you see a different balance, and it reflects then the need for digital skills in the developing economies in Asia and the Pacific. What we also found is that if we break it down to a skill level, and as Dave had pointed out, how important it is to look at a skills first lens when it comes to expanding and building out our talent pipelines. What we found is that at a skill level, coding and programming skills across the board are emerging as real needs in all jobs in all countries that we covered. SQL and Java come up as in-demand skills across all economies that we covered. And this really reflects some of the relevance across occupational areas. We really need people who have data analysis and programming skills across different industries. And then finally, in the report, as I had said, we covered 3 particular industry sectors: smart cities, e-learning, and renewable energy. Across all industries, if you look at all 3 in aggregate terms, 60% of talent hired in these 3 industries across the board require digital skills, but renewable energy and e-learning tend to require a greater proportion of digital skills and digital talent. That's probably because these industries are newer and they tend to also require a more digitally savvy workforce. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Shanti, who will take us through some of the findings of the survey.
Okay, thank you, Trisha. I want to thank you for the partnership on the study. You've been involved in it from day one when we started to conceptualize it. When we initiated the study, we knew that we will find that digital skills and demand for digital skills is proceeding at breakneck speed. So we also wanted to go a little beyond it to understand the terrain of how the credentials market is recognizing digital talent. So with that objective, we commissioned a survey of employers in the 3 industries that Trisha mentioned: e-learning, smart cities, and the green economy to understand what employer sentiments are in the context of digital credentials. And on the supply side, we also surveyed a number of training institutions who offer online training that come with digital credentials. So this kind of, this type of a thing gave us an opportunity to understand the landscape of how things are emerging in the context of digital skills. The study found that there's probably a sort of a revolution underway in relation to the rise of digital credentials. Nearly 90% of those who were surveyed consider that digital credentials are going to be a critical component of higher education in the future. We found that in terms of job applications, nearly a third of job applications in the countries and in the sectors that we surveyed were accompanied by one kind of digital credential or the other. In relation to sectors, we found that all the three sectors had quite a robust uptake of digital credentials. And in fact, in India and Indonesia, we found that actually the demand for digital credentials was even higher. In fact, 20% more job applications in these two countries were accompanied by digital credentials than the US, for instance, which was used as a comparator country. And this probably comes from the fact that there is intense competition for jobs, and digital credentials are one way of standing out in the crowd to get the job. We also found that while it's on the rise, digital credentials are not going to oust the traditional qualifications and degrees in the short term, and they will actually coexist and complement them. So therefore, the majority of those who surveyed felt that this will kind of coexist in the short to medium term. And we also found that digital credentials were more popular or more in use for entry-level recruitment, in the sense that people who are getting their first jobs, this was a great way of increasing their chances of getting a job. Whereas went up to middle and senior level positions, the use of digital credentials was somewhat lower in proportion. And this could also mean that it's now the young people who are really seeking the opportunities to learn online, and the fact that for senior positions, experience starts to count more. In terms of the sectors, as I mentioned, all three sectors showed very robust uptake of digital credentials. Online, that should be online education employers. So online education employers was the sector that had the maximum number of job applications with digital credentials. In terms of the kinds of credentials, we found that digital certificates were the most popular. Then come a digital license, badges, micromasters, and nano degrees. But we should really take this as very much as an evolving landscape and likely to transform continuously. In fact, IBM alone has issued about 3 million digital badges in the recent past. So we should really take this to be a evolving landscape. I think as a development bank, we should also be cognizant that digital skills are also an arena where inequality shows up significantly. And we all know about the digital divide that COVID really kind of spotlighted. In this also, we found that female enrollment in digital courses were far lower than male enrollment, and about quite a significant proportion of employers who were surveyed reported that far fewer applications from females were accompanied by digital credentials. And we also found that in the industries such as smart cities and renewable energy were dominated by male candidates. More of the workforce was in favor of males, which we know that, labor force participation of women in general is a challenge, but some of these industries, the equity angle is even sharper. And more importantly, going forward, it's important to recognize that women with advanced technical skills are really at a disadvantage, and we really need to pay attention to that. But on the positive side, we found that e-learning as an industry or online learning as an industry saw a good proportion of women and young people in the workforce. And this is particularly true in Indonesia and India. India, in fact, is showing a very strong proportion of women participating in the workforce in the e-learning industry. So let me now move on to the last slide and to the recommendations. I think the obvious finding is that we really need to invest in digital skills in order to leverage the potential jobs that are being created by the digital transformation, the enormous potential that exists from the growth of e-commerce markets, where Asia and the Pacific is leading the world. We need to really invest across the board for digital skills. We need to expand the opportunity for advanced digital skills, which is, all the newer technologies, whether it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics. We need to increase the proportion of the workforce with those kinds of skills. And it's also important to look at establishing a sort of a good ecosystem with appropriate policy frameworks, which recognize both digital credentials, traditional and degree-based qualifications, and how they interplay and how they kind of interact with each other as employers recruit digital talent. Given that online learning has been, another finding of this study was that there's a huge spurt in short cycle training programs. So which also means that we really need to look at policy frameworks that allow with vertical stacking, which means that you study over time, or you learn over time, and you pick up the skills over time, which then stack up to a degree or a certificate, and horizontal stacking, which means that you really look at acquiring skills in adjacent disciplines, in disciplines that kind of compact together to form a good technical skill. And this is absolutely an emerging field which needs to be looked into. And there's great need for workplace-based and on-the-job training for digital skills. And last but not least, definitely not least, we need to really pay attention to how women and disadvantaged youth and other people with vulnerabilities are able to access opportunities for digital skills, which will really also augment their chances of remaining in the workforce or accessing new and emerging jobs in promising industries, in sunrise industries, and to remain in the workforce where industries are transforming with digitalization. With that, let me thank everyone, my IDB colleagues and the LinkedIn team. Thank you.
Thanks, Trisha. Thanks, Shanti. A huge amount there to unpack, of course. Before we go to our next speakers, I just want to say that we have seen a question come in online regarding the access to the report. So the report is already on the ADB website, adb.org, but I will ask the organizers to put the link in the chat as well. And for people who are here, there are copies by the door, so please do take one on your way out. But I want to talk to the two industry leaders that we have with us today. We have online Jack Madrid. He's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the IT and Business Process Association in the Philippines. And here with us on stage, Lito Tayag, Managing Director of Accenture here in the Philippines, who are just going to say a few words about the importance of digital skills in the workplace. Of course, you're driving this demand, of course. Jack, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to our friends at the Asian Development Bank and LinkedIn on publishing this study. I can't think of a more important time for the history of jobs, especially here in our country and the industry, for this kind of discussion. Given how the future of work has changed, largely in part from the pandemic, and the ongoing global war for talent, especially in our industry. This is indeed a very important conversation that we should all be having. I want to start by just saying that the IT-BPM industry is an indispensable economic pillar for the Philippines. We are today at 1.5 million jobs and generating 30 billion in revenue to the country's economy. That's 7.5% of the GDP. So we are a human capital intensive industry. And this topic of talent is going to be critical to the plans of the industry to add 1 million more jobs for Filipinos in the next 6 years. Those numbers are a result of a 6-month-long study that IBPAP, together with our research partners, the Everest Group, recently launched, actually just last week. And it is an ambitious target. We have chosen to focus on the aggressive range, which is why it is 1 million, not 700,000. And it is going to be our rallying cry for the industry as well as the country. 1 million jobs took us almost 2 decades. And we're going to try to do that in the next 6 years. So I just wanted to stress that because it is indeed very important. Now, at a recent World Bank presentation on global value chain and how the Philippines can participate, our industry was also called out, and the need to upskill and reskill our existing workforce was also highlighted as critical to our continuing evolution for higher value jobs. And so there is little argument about how important this is. I want to highlight some of the accelerators on the topic of talent that our roadmap 2028 highlighted. I'm just going to go through this very quickly because I know we have a Q&A session and other speakers after this. Based on the roadmap, IT-BPM companies in the country have highlighted the following key priorities and expectations in terms of the need for the requirements for talent. Digital transformation and requirements for digitally skilled talent, specifically in the area of customer experience management. The cloud and data analytics certainly came out in all the surveys, interviews, and discussions we had during the 6-month period for our roadmap. Higher order, industry-specific work requiring domain understanding across different verticals like healthcare, financial services, banking, as well as 3D animation were also highlighted. But it's also interesting that more soft skills, leadership skills, requiring better leadership and management experience were also equally highlighted. So it is not just digital, but also digital combined with leadership and soft skills and domain knowledge across the verticals that I mentioned. The future of work, has also changed the work types, and this will continue to accelerate in the years ahead. The landscape for our industry is consistently evolving, and the companies all across all the verticals are compelled to switch to more digital solutions, which will lead to a growing adoption of next generation technologies, such as analytics, automation, AI, machine learning, cloud, and a suite of other services. For SMEs, specific business process functions, such as finance, accounting, and supply chain, were also called out in all our in the research that we just undertook. Traditional IT, Java, SQL were also highlighted, and then language skills aside from English, which is how our industry began several decades ago. So these were the highlights of the findings from our roadmap research. In terms of the emerging service areas in the IT-BPM sector, I just want to mention a few things. The evolution of the service landscapes requires the workforce to evolve to match the growing needs of the industry in terms of current as well as future demand. As we adapt to evolving business models, the workforce of the future is expected to have a vast array of multifunctional skills, ingrained non-technical skills with industry knowledge. and an ability to work with digital tools, as well as the all-important interpersonal and collaboration skills as well. The emergence of future jobs requiring higher cognitive skills, technical competencies, and domain knowledge will always be important. And this is spread out across all the verticals that our industry, the IT BPM industry, has evolved in the past couple of decades. The major source of employment and headcount of our workforce will, and for a long time, continue to be contact centers. But even the nature of the functions in the contact center space that I believe Lito Tayag will be talking about after me, has continued and will continue to evolve, including some of the things I already mentioned, like data analytics and performance management and legal processes. So thank you again for allowing me to speak and for the IBPAP to participate in this very important discussion. I was also very interested to see the importance of digital credentials. I can only add that, in a recent Global Talent Council that I attended with my counterparts from other associations in other regions, the need for a global standard and certification is really important for us to work together towards that standard, so we have a commonality of purpose. And I think I look forward to the rest of this discussion this afternoon and to the Q&A that follows. Thank you again, and congratulations on the study. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Jack. And your comments on digital credentials, I think, speak to one of the questions that we've got, but we'll perhaps come back to that later. Lito, I think you're going to build on Jack's comments, right?
Yes, thank you, Karen, and good afternoon, everyone. There's been a very rich content and insights in the discussion so far, and of course in the study itself. So let me just focus on some of those that resonate with me, and I'd like to start on the significance of the study. First, I think it is timely and relevant in the context of the situation where we are here today, which is still the remnants of the pandemic situation that we have. And the results highlight the growing importance of digital skills and the requirement of investing in the upskilling of our workforce, both at the corporate level as well as at the country level, at scale. And I would like to emphasize that, and I think it's important for us to highlight that. Many of the results should actually be input to the roadmaps of the different industries, and Jack has actually just discussed the relevance to the IT BPO. But I think it is also true for the rest of the industries. After all, most of the industries actually depend on talent. And in the same vein, I think the study would be an appropriate input, and I want to candidly say this, to the government as well, as the government actually starts to put in its plans for the new administration. And this is particularly relevant to some of the education agencies of the government, particularly the Department of Education, the Commission on Higher Education, even the Department of Information and Communications Technology, and maybe even the Department of Trade and Industry. Lastly, at Accenture, we say that sustainability is the new digital. And so I suggest that we view this in the larger umbrella of sustainability beyond equality and inclusion, but which may also include other areas of the Sustainable Development Goals like poverty and education as well. On the study, some of the details, let me just comment on some of the findings, particularly on the digital hiring being on the rise, and that basic literacy is now essential. Upskilling the workforce then is a necessary investment, not only through hiring, but also in building new skills for the existing workforce. We want to ensure that the current members of the workforce, our people, continue to learn and are in step with the rapid changes in technology and therefore of the requirements for digital skills. Just as an example, in the fiscal year 2022, Accenture has more than 75,000 people in the Philippines, clocked more than 5 million training hours. And then we focused also on core technologies, on technology platforms that drive digital transformation. but also includes other skills such as analytical thinking, agile, and human-centric design, problem solving, and then even value-based decision making. But I say again, I emphasize this has to be done at scale. Therefore, the government and the academe should increase investments in creating new digital skills for the workforce of the future. On digitalization gathering pace in the pandemic affected industries, I believe that this is true as well on other industries, not just on the three industries that the study also has focused. And as we all know, the pandemic has actually hit a fast forward button on digital transformation for most industries, if not all industries. And therefore, we will have to be able to radically define the new experiences from the way that we connect with customers to how we and the employees work and even how we provide services and goods. And so companies will need to increase their investment in technology, redefine customer experiences, and articulate new employee value propositions. On data analytics, which was highlighted in the study itself, that this is a fast growing across all industries in the report. And in the Philippines, unfortunately, data science is not a common skill set developed at the senior high school and even at the college levels in the Philippines. And in fact, hiring enough data analytics is one of the problems of the IT sector of IBPAP, of the IT BPM industry. And if we are to leverage, the trend to accelerate growth, then we need to invest in building data science, both at the corporate level and at the educational system. And students and the workforce will have to see that this is a good career path with opportunities for growth. And so that the government, through the Commission on Higher Education, and even the Department of Education should take the lead in building this particular capability. At the same time, I'd like to highlight this, that non-degree learning centers, which came out in the study itself, actually has the opportunity to be part of the building of these skills. I'd like to cite a particular example. The Ateneo has a center called Center for Continuing Education. This is non-degree, and these are the types of examples of learning centers that probably will be relevant in providing short-term courses for very specific skills. Lastly, on the equal access to digital skilling, again, that has already been mentioned, but I'd like to say, as I said, a wider view that digitalization offers a unique opportunity to accelerate initiatives on many of the sustainable development goals, not only on equality, and also inclusion and diversity, but also on poverty and also on education. And again, just as an example, for many companies, particularly in this industry, we're focusing on how we could actually focus our corporate citizenship and leverage our core competencies in order to make a difference in those demographics, particularly on women, on persons with disabilities, and especially those with less access to technology. And again, as an example, Accenture actually has a very clear gender hiring target. That our target will have to be based on what we want our gender diversity to be. And today I'm very happy to say that we have 54% women in Accenture in the Philippines, and this is maintained not only at the entry level, but also at the executive level and all the way to the managing director level. By creating these targets, I think it is important to focus them to get to these outcomes of equality and inclusion and diversity. In closing, let me comment on some of the recommendations moving forward. We said that stepping up the pace of digital skill development to ensure future readiness should be a joint investment by the private sector, the academe, and the government. In enabling digital skill development for advanced and disruptive technologies requires the government units in education to review the current system and strengthen the curricula in creating new offerings that build higher skills for the digital economy. And lastly, promoting equality and inclusion should be the main driver in subsidizing and diversifying online learning centers. And I go back to sustainability as the umbrella principle in expanding digital capabilities and skills. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we'll come back to you on this gender equity issue a little bit later because I see a question coming in. But I want to turn to Gi-sun Song to get some perspective on how this really fits into ADB operations. Gi-sun, of course, well known to many of us here, is the Director of Human and Social Development Division in our South Asia Department. Gi-sun.
Thank you very much. As a person working closely with the government on the education sector and the skills development, the speakers actually talking about digital technology and then how it can actually create a better workforce and industry and higher productivity and so on. It sounds like all homework to me. So we've been working with the government all over Asia and Pacific. Me coming from South Asia, where the large segment of population is still young. That's like this demographic dividend and augmented by the good education and skills development, contributing to the economy and society becoming like a real big imperatives. And then digital technology being a tool as well as an aim for the developing human capital is like a very much resonating. Therefore, like we welcome this study, and the recommendations is very much in line with what we've been advising to the government, but as coming as an evidence and substantiated with the industry feedback is a really great input for our operation. And I would like to highlight a few things that also highlighted by our business community as a kind of demand to the education sector and skills development. We feel this like education, we have a popular saying, like we are actually teaching 21st century kids by the 20th century teachers in the 19th century classroom. Then this has been the kind of challenges faced by education sector for a long time. And then ADB as a development partner, we've been investing a lot on the improving 19th century classroom to modernize it, and then also training the teachers to become like a 21st century teachers, or the leading the technological changes and then bringing that to the student competencies. But we're dealing with the so-called digital native children in the classroom. And then with the pandemic, they have gone through tremendous disruption. And then therefore, like it or not, they all plunged into this like a pandemic and post-pandemic era. So this like a disruption actually bringing a lot of challenges, but at the same time, opportunities for this old school paradigm is actually really quickly changing. And there are a lot of countries, government in South Asia region, and I'm sure the same thing for all over Asia, is like quickly adopting and leveraging the digital platforms. They've been actually out of emergency situation, they've been adopting, and then they're learning quickly from the lessons of the mistakes they have actually experienced during the early stages of pandemic and school closure. And then they try to leverage that experience to bring in better education experience. And then like individually also a lot of people kind of adopting to this new technology and so on. And then I see that when I saw the first graph on the digital technology higher overshooting, like very kind of surprisingly, I think that it is also reflecting people's kind of tagging the digital technology as an important skills, both employers and the job seekers. So there are opportunities, and with all these like great inputs and the feedback from the industry, like we hope to work closely with the policymakers and the education authorities in the countries, throughout our investment programs and the technical advisory and policy advisory. We hope like we can bring in this accelerated changes to the education sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Gi-sun. Thank you. Now I want to throw open the floor to the actual floor here in the room, and also the digital floor. We have a few questions come in, so please just raise your hand if you have a question. While you're thinking, Jack, I'm going to come to you first because there is a question coming in online about digital credentials. And I think the question is around the quality of the provider of the digital credentials. You mentioned it. And you mentioned the need to have some standardization around that. Until that happens, is there an issue, or do you see a question around who is providing the digital credentials?
No, that's a very timely question from one of our participants. I don't really have an answer to that, except to say that, you know, what is more immediate in terms of need is really addressing the curriculum gap, which has really caused this large mismatch of talent supply and demand. In the Philippines, as an example, we have over 800,000 university graduates annually, and yet, our conversion rate for our industry remains quite low, I would say, and that is in large part. I mean, it's a very complex issue. It begins actually at the elementary school level, because we don't quite have the STEM background that a country like India has. But going back to the credentials, I think we need to address the curriculum first, and making sure that those relevant digital skills that were highlighted in the study, together with the support of our private sector, help the academe update their curriculum. There are some programs in our roadmap that are going to try to address that. Easier said than done, because there's a lot of moving parts: the private sector, the employers, the academe, and there are different, there is the government controlled colleges and universities, and you have the private universities as well. But I think addressing the curriculum gap is first and foremost, and we will probably, once we have some of that in place, then we will be able to better deal with the accreditation and reputation of the credential providers. I hope that is useful.
Sure. Thanks very much. So, a much bigger issue to tackle, as you say then. Lita, I want to come to you next, because there is a question about how can we make digital skills a game changer for women in the workplace? And the question is specifically about India. And I'm picking on you, I'm afraid, because before we started, you mentioned to me that Accenture has a very large operations in India. So you mentioned some of these things in the Philippines. Do you think that that can translate to India?
To India.
To India. To empower, bring women into the workplace using, applying their digital skills.
I hope my Indian colleagues should be able to answer that instead of me. But I think in general, I think though that this industry will allow that inclusive participation of women from any country, for that matter. And I think we have that unique opportunity, particularly in the industry. And now even with the digital skills, for example, that could be acquired digitally and sometimes virtually, for example, which will allow women participation at a better scale, at a better inclusion levels than probably other male-dominated industries, such as construction, for example.
Right. Thanks very much. So yeah, absolutely applies to any country, as you mentioned. Kisun, you wanted to mention something? Thanks.
Yeah, may I add on? Like we found when we kind of introduced more STEM subject to the senior secondary and secondary schools, and then try to encourage more female students to enroll in the technology and science technology area in the higher education. What we found, like while their learning achievements is quite high in the secondary level, they're kind of shy from the especially computer science and engineering and IT subjects, because they're kind of, at least in the South Asia context, that it is known to be male dominant, and then the working environment of like a long working hours and then 3 shifts a day and so on is less like a favorable among the female students. So there is like a kind of stereotyping. So there, we are kind of putting some effort to encourage the female students, and then kind of informing them what are the job requirements and job perspective and professional development opportunities, and then how also working with the employers to create like a more female friendly environment. So as like Alito mentioned, the digital technology has a lot of applications. As you see, the e-learning is actually coming as large employers like utilizing digital skills. So therefore, education is traditionally also female dominant occupations. So there is a good match, and then there is a good opportunity.
Happy to hear it. Happy to hear it. I'm very cognizant that we're coming to the bottom of the hour. We do have a lot of questions coming in, but I'm afraid we just don't have time to get to all of them. But I very quickly want to ask one last question, if you could answer it really quickly, Tricia and Shanti. The question is around when you did the study. So you started it pre-pandemic. I think you finished it just into the pandemic. The question is it still valid in the post-pandemic period? Shanti, go first. Thank you.
This is such a rapidly transforming sector that what holds today may not hold tomorrow. So the speed of transformation is something that's been phenomenal. I think we have all seen it and acknowledged it. So while that speed of change is actually going to bring many new things, there are some very very conscious trends that we can work on with more deliberate strategies. What we find is that working on more advanced technical skills, digital technical skills is important, and that will take a little bit of our talent pipeline building. So definitely that's going to be valid for the next few years. And the trends in the 3 sectors are also going to be valid in the medium term to come. Let me pass it over to.
Yeah, I don't know if I have that much more to add, but a study like that provided us a baseline on some of the changes that have happened through the pandemic, and these changes continue to happen around us. And I come back to maybe a personal story of my mom, who was a tuition teacher. When the pandemic hit, she had to do all that teaching online. And we saw in the report as well, a lot of the e-learning sector has been driven by a higher gender and female representation, a high female representation. And I look at her today going, okay, she is now so confident of using Zoom and teaching on Zoom, and that makes her so proud and so empowered that she's now looking at other ways in which she can be more involved in the digital economy. So I feel like some of these changes that we've seen over the last 2.5 years, we've seen the report, has only changed people's lives, but continue to change lives. And we're only going to see more of these digital jobs and digital skills emerging.
Thanks. We can all be inspired by your mom. That's great. That's great. Thanks so much. We're at almost at the end of our session. I'm going to ask my colleague, Sung-Suk Rai, he's the Chief Sector Officer here at ADB, to give some closing remarks. Sung-Suk, please.
Thank you, everyone, and distinguished panelists for joining the session today. It has been a very rich discussion. Digitalization has, I would say, sea changes in the labor market we discussed today. COVID-19 accelerated digital transformation. Now remote hybrid worker and digital nomad have emerged as a like full-fledged breed of the workers. Digital nomad population in the US has increased from 7.3 million to about 11 million between 2019 and 2020. The peoples in the traditional job also are opting to be digital nomad, now happening in places. Digital has now become mainstream. Digitalization has caused job losses to whom do not acquire those skills in the context of changing skill demand change. But digital skill also strengthening the flexibility that work seeking. Now we're talking about women issue of this. I would say that was particularly mom, so that they can now effectively manage their time between being a mom, being a wife, being also the worker. That really helped. As Bruno Weiler was suggested about this 3E, employment, environment, and equity. Here now, I'm like to us to consider 3R, the reimagining, second, reskilling, and rewarding in the context of the fostering digital skill. First, we need to reimagine the way we think about training and skill development for a new digital world. The phenomenal spikes, as you can observe a while ago, in the online learning during COVID-19 is not expected to diminish as companies are increasingly opting for hybrid work. A while ago, we talked to LinkedIn, they are completely now hybrid, right? And then ADB also, we are adopting this hybrid working. The use of the immersive technology such as VR, AR, MR, and also big data that will give the highly interactive, engaging learning experiences that were not possible. We couldn't imagine this before. Students with disability can also access wider learning opportunity through the immersive technology. So things change so much, so we have to reimagine. Second, the second R of reskilling is to tap digital solution to address current and emerging skill gaps. For instance, some estimates suggest that global health care workforces gap is likely to reach about 15 million workers by 2030. Digital technology and digital upskilling of health professionals will help to meet these challenges of both the changing healthcare need and also the skill gaps in the sector. A while ago, DG Bruno mentioned about ADB climate change ambition. The ADB President Massa has recently declared ADB to be region's climate bank. And also he announced ADB climate financing ambition to 100 billion cumulatively through 2030. Upskilling and reskilling are key to achieve the climate change ambition and smooth transition to green economy. We need to think about healthcare, as you said, and about the universal application of digital skill. Lastly, the third R of the rewarding is about digital credential. We talk about this. This report also covered a lot on this one. Increasingly, the traditional qualification like degree, formal degree getting from high school and university are being supplemented with the digital credential we're discussing. We need to think more about how these can serve not just the young, digital savvy young people, but and mid-career workers and also disadvantaged people and women also to remain relevant in new context. And also older people to remain longer in the workplace. This report only the beginning of the unpacking some of the very crucial issues that we faced with. I look forward to continuing conversation in this area. Again, thank you, the distinguished panelists, and also all participants here for sharing your insight and also interaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Sung Suk. Well, with those inspiring words, we say thank you. We take your leave. We wish you a good rest of the day. Please do read the report. It's online. It's very inspiring. I'm inspired already. Digital jobs and digital skills. Thank you very much to our panelists and for those of you joining online and in person. Thank you. A group photo? Yes, yes. Can I take a few copies of these? Oh. Everyone has one?
We have to